The New 52 films by Warner Bros. Animation and multiple comic book sources were and still are controversial.
On what?
As a huge Batman fan, I appreciated the focus on the Bat family, even if Tim and Jay and Babs were invisible the whole time. And as a huge Batman fan, I went out of my way to watch other movies based outside of Gotham, like all the movies with Justice League or Teen Titans in the title. None of those movies that I had seen or the others that I had been advised against watching were all that great. So once I heard we were getting a reboot in the form of a trilogy, I was relieved. I can't lie, I was relieved. I know how annoying reboots are when compared to normal superhero franchises with beautiful linear timelines. Cough. Invincible. One Punch Man. Or My Hero Academia. But, I mean, come on. Clark and Bruce rivals. Clark x Diana. The only sidekicks with any screen time are the Titans. Everyone else is basically invisible except from one scene. Dick can't beat Damian more than once. Damian defeated Slade Wilson, and that's not even half of it. Someone on Reddit put it perfectly. It was part retcon, part reboot, part continuation of certain timelines. Please, I just wish we went again. And we are. After the events of Justice League Dark Apocalypse 4, that gory train wreck of a movie with a suicide mission to kill Darkseid and Barry being peer pressured into resetting the universe that I'm still too scared to watch. DC and Warner Bros. Created a story arc to fix that story and this whole universe called the Tomorrowverse, likely named after the fact that we all keep putting off watching these movies to the point that no one even knows what the most important movies on this list are about until now. That's what I'm here for. I watched Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 to tell you whether this trilogy is worth watching. And if you have time, check out my description. There should be something fun for you to do in there. So this video is going to be split into two halves. Section A, where I explain, describe, comment on the first movie, and section B is concluding whether this movie and its two sequels are worth watching, because I mean nobody is. So section A, movie 1, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. Let's get into it. Just a disclaimer, you don't really need to watch the other movies before this one to actually understand this one. So as long as you know who the Justice League are, the protectors of Earth and the multiverse, you will understand. So we open with Barry the Flash running through the multiverse and ending up in a broken down version of his own lab. He's a scientist in multiple iterations in another universe. A universe we will dub Universe 1. What do you think you would do when you wake up in another universe? What do you think would happen immediately? Well, immediately in Universe 1, Barry Allen decides to go to a cafe and meets up with this universe's version of Iris, who is actually his wife, and cha-chas into a conversation with her. When he hears an old guy saying outside of a window by the cafe, "Flash, hey, my eye, wake up." Suddenly he's elsewhere in Universe 2, because that's not disorientating or anything for the viewer, with civilians parroting the phrase "get up, get up, get up." Professor Ivo is currently talking down Amazo, both very poignant characters in multiple comics. Amazo, this character who can absorb typically the powers of metahumans and is a villain, and Professor Ivo, who's just a scientist. So we're obviously assuming that Amazo must have knocked down Barry in the first place. Barry assumes this too, since he recognizes Amazo somehow. But Barry has allies here, so he's not alone, luckily. Though his allies seem to have a big attitude. I mean, I don't know what this Clark dialogue was.
Clark practically rolls his eyes and is like, "Oh my god, okay, you don't know why you know? Okay, whatever." And I'm just like, damn, he's not where he's supposed to be, the main Earth that we're familiar with. Very clearly by the fucking sass on this super pants.
I mean, he's just as useless against their parasitic foe as Barry is. So Clark is actually the one who gets the most injured, and he doesn't want to go to Star Labs. So they turn up at his bestie's place, and Bruce and Alfred aren't impressed. Regardless, they let Barry bring Clark and Ollie inside, only for him to end up right back into Universe 1, where he is on a walk with Iris, looking at flowers for their wedding. She's encouraging him to help the old guy from before out, who Barry doesn't recognize until the very end, when he is shoved back into the time stream thing and lands in universe 3, a universe where Bruce brings Dick over for a change of scenery and asks if Barry had any places to send an orphan before Dick even gets out of the room to meet Wally, which is great. We're seeing characters that I don't believe were introduced much or at all in the other movies. There is so much awkward silences in the scene and strange pacing. Barry thinks that Bruce is good for him, and Bruce is like, nah bro, and Barry just turns up at Universe 2 where bratty teenage girl Clark is getting his treatment, unconscious. This whole scene, by the way, is the funniest of the movie, mostly because of Ollie, who is funny throughout this whole movie.
So, how long did it take figuring out my secret identity?
Oh shit! Fucking ow!
They decide while they're healing their friend and bantering that Ivo and Amazo are the enemy and to make the Justice League. And can I say, this Superman is bratty in the beginning, but the moment he's injured, his attitude kind of disappears. It's horribly inconsistent. It makes no sense. Anyway, they make a Justice League and then Flash is whisked away again by the old guy reappearing. Oop, he's in Universe 4 now. Superheroes are criminals because the Crime Syndicate of America are ruling the world and he can't beat them on his own. Barry realizes the homeless guy sent him there at some point because he was getting memory issues between dimensions and only now fully understood what was happening with the old guy, but is still surprised when he is transported back to Universe 2 into the middle of a speech announcing the Justice League's existence. Dude, Barry literally just woke up essentially and he's like, the Flash, please make a speech. And Barry's like, wait, what time is it? Damn, oof. The speech is interrupted by Amazo's attack, and Amazo actually talks to Barry in this super speed kind of time. The writers try to write Amazo as this pacifist android with good intent to supercharge regular people's immune systems by taking meta powers. What in the hell? Anyways, science, okay? Science. Superhero science. Even though it's his directive, he's not supposed to harm metas to do that. So this pacifist android is obviously not working on his own volition, and we find out that it's been manipulated by Luthor's mastermind hacking. But this only really comes across to me as a little bit of a butchering of Amazo's character. Maybe I am misinformed, but from what I've learned about Amazo, I feel like this is just really simplistic. I don't think he's ever been very kind and sweet, loving of his creator. But this is an alternate universe, who's to say? During this fight where all this stuff is revealed, Batman wants to bomb the place and Barry decides he's gonna find another way by going back into the multiverse. So this is maybe one of the only times we're seeing that he's intentionally running towards the multiverse on his own. Too bad he ends up in the middle of nowhere for a second, hot minute. He's like, oh. Then he ends up in the Hall of Crime in Universe 4 again. The Hall of Crime as opposed to the Hall of Justice. Very funny. He tells the Crime Syndicate of America, the ones who are ruling the world, that he comes from a parallel Earth. They don't believe him, but they figure out that he's telling the truth. Then he finds out, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have told them that I'm from a parallel Earth because now they just want to rule it in a cruel way too. I don't know. This whole scene is really tacky. It's super tacky, but whatever. They're about to kill him to get space to travel in the time stream thing, since having two speedsters alive is a crowd in the time stream, when the old guy comes in and he saves Barry. Barry ends up then in Universe 1 again on his wedding day, and he's like, damn, well, since I'm already here, I may as well go and see Iris. So they say hi. And then he's in Universe 2 again. He goes to see Ivo, and he's like, that's what I was missing. I needed to go find you because I think you can help with Luthor, who has controlled your android. So Batman doesn't have to bomb the place, which is the entire reason he left the Universe 2 in the first place. In the middle of running there, though, he's back in Universe 4 watching the Crime Syndicate protecting their buildings from being destroyed by the end of the world waterfall of death, whatever that is. Alongside the old guy, he learns that this world is dead, in essence, and that the old guy and he share a punishment to walk the doomed worlds for no known reason, at least to either of them. Then we're back in Universe 2 and they're losing against Amazo because they suck. I mean, they just suck as a league right now. They're newly formed. Luthor's voice is weird. I mean, he sounds like Spock to me. Is that just me? Is that just me? Please, I'll play it a little bit.
You can't imagine I didn't anticipate that.
He sounds like Spock. Any of my Star Trek girlies and lads will know. Another thing that's weird is that the professor uses talk no jutsu to make a bloody android kill his creator and turn on Luthor. God, what a shitty action sequence.
Professor Ivo, are you unwell?
He's dead.
That is an unacceptable outcome. Everything functioned within expected parameters.
This ends with them getting their strength back and Barry waking up in Universe 1, the original universe, but it's like flashed forward at least. Or maybe this is not the original universe. I'm not sure. I'm going to assume this is Universe 1 flashed forward after the wedding and everything, because he's getting up from his bed, he's going down to eat breakfast with Iris, and he's looking maybe 50. It's the anniversary of the day they met, and they have to get to work after he eats. Very suspicious. What does that mean? And then all of a sudden they're flashing back and it's their wedding day and the conversation he left her with before. I don't think he was transported here though, since the transition isn't used, like that whole yellow transition isn't used. I think it's just a cut. But you know, who's to say? This movie is disorientating. They marry and then Barry gets recruited by Harbinger, who I think I saw in the Batman Superman, that Supergirl movie, not Public Enemies, the other one. But apart from that, I haven't seen her before. So I was like, damn, who the hell? Like, who's this? But yeah, she is collecting Earth's greatest heroes from the entire multiverse and she takes him to the middle of nowhere, the place where Barry was in before he ended up in Universe 4 for the second time. If you think you're confused, just imagine how fried my brain was at this point. In fact, it was only revitalized by a cute scene with Bruce and an older Dick in an older Robin uniform and not the Nightwing one. R.I.P. I kind of wished I saw Nightwing here. And Helena, his daughter in one universe, a huntress, who is just her own vigilante as well, who has a bit controversial methods, I think, because they wanted a female Gotham hero. And apparently Barbara Gordon, who is a Batgirl, literally the Batgirl, or Stephanie Brown, who is an ex-Robin and another Batgirl, or Cassandra Cain, another Batgirl, who is his adopted daughter in most universes, were all unavailable apparently. So they just chose Helena. I mean, why? A lot of heroes meet each other from different universes. Of course, I like the normal League lineup and the Young Justice lineup, everybody in that. I love Kara, Supergirl, sorry, and Mr. Terrific. Everyone else, I don't really give a shit about, sorry. I kind of like Blue Beetle, but that's mostly from Young Justice, I can't lie. Babs makes an appearance, but she's still not a focal point. And
53 minutes in it on the dot. There's a toddler in the background. She looks so derpy, dude. Look at her face. Oh.
And I love her too. Once they're kind of settled, Monitor, this guy, one of the mandem, no, steps up and introduces himself. He says that his kind is supposed to observe the universes from a distance, but he kind of sort of wants to stop the entire multiverse from destroying itself, so he called them here to ask them to stop it for him or with him. We cut back to Universe 1 on Iris and Barry's anniversary, where they are dressing up for this elusive work they have to do. We still don't know what that is. Then we see Universe 4, where the crime syndicate is in the process of losing the battle against the earth-ending foe, the waterfall of death. Then we go back to the middle of nowhere, where they are having this discussion, a group discussion, where they listen to Barry's testimony. Oh yeah, I think it actually happens. Two Clarks, old and young, watch a world be destroyed, and they also go, oh yeah, I think this actually might happen. And Bruce figures out that, oh no, this isn't us just sitting on our ass and trying to beat the waterfall or whatever it is. This is us thinking about it. This is the think tank. We actually are going to be thinking. And Monitor tells those without a brain, cough, Hawkman, cough, that the rest of them are laborers. So Bruce, I guess, is part of the thinkers, even though he doesn't include himself. And the rest of the people are just there to build the actual things, you know? Monitor also tells them that they have no backup and that if they don't sort this out, the multiverse is gonna be destroyed. So maybe they did want to help him out. Maybe. We transition to Universe 4, where the crime syndicate have completely lost against the waterfall, and Barry is in a race against the other speedster to escape the very same fate that the others perished to. Unfortunately, fortunately for us, unfortunately for the other guy, he loses, Barry wins this race.
The idea that cars are hitting them while they're in the Speed Force is so insanely dumb. I think I am missing something. Very clearly, I'm missing something. Because that doesn't sound possible.
And then we transition again to Barry in Universe 1, finally at work. Basically, Barry is a hamster in a wheel to power a bodiless Amazo so he can work on a project that is 99% complete. Amazo is working on this project. Once we find that out, we cut to the middle of nowhere where the scientists work on a solution. They get a bit angsty, and then Barry brings them coffee that apparently is amazing and an idea to make one super multi-dimensional machine to power the simpler machines on all the Earths. They're going to use vibration or something, the way that Barry transverses through different dimensions. They're going to use that and protect everything. We also get Barry in Universe 1 working on the project. All of a sudden, while they're building it, the wave accelerates. This waterfall of death accelerates. Bruce, in his usual paranoia, says, "The wave knows we're here. It knows." But even if Monitor disagrees, they ain't got the time to check. Because we're Barry, and Barry is in Universe 4 again, confronted by the old guy as he helps to set up the machine and is told to run to her. Who's her? Obviously Iris. Iris on Earth 1, where the Supermen are, is that one journalist who is way too committed to her job. God damn. He saves her, but they do ultimately die together, and suddenly we're back in Universe 1 where they're even older than 50. They're like 60, 70, it looks like. And Iris is collapsing and also dies. It's a parallel. The project is almost complete though, and this is the work that they have to do, and so Barry does it. Even as the love of his life is now dead, he can't be late. Then we go to new worlds and new people. For example, we see Batman saying goodbye to Robin and Huntress, family from another world he doesn't know, which is sandwiched shut by Barry, who is just lost to Iris, finishing the project as a hamster again, losing his version of Amazo, who was also committed to prolonging human life and completing the project. The supercomputer that would power all the simpler ones, and we do complete the project. We're closing with this image, this creature, this thing from whoever knows where, that Barry is responsible for what happened here. And then he is sent through the Speed Force back to Universe 1 and the broken down version of his lab.
Him high-speeding it as an old man is kind of hilarious. Me running for my bus, be like...
Once he's there, once he's thinking, Barry's like, you know what? What the hell is going on? What is happening? Why did this happen? I want to go back to the beginning of it all to stop whatever I did, whatever my fault is from happening. So he goes back to primitive time. Then he goes to Universe 1 on his wedding day where there is a dance sequence. What the actual fuck? And now everything is vanishing and nothing ever existed. There's no post-credits scene. I don't know. You're asking questions and I don't know. Section B. Was Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1 worth watching, and are Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 and 3 worth watching? Starting with movie 1, I have a lot of initial thoughts. I mean, first of all, Constantine is definitely the old guy now that I think about it. The action sequence as a whole were too long and they had a lot of plot holes, and they changed a lot of ethnicity complexities in this movie of certain characters, which made it hard to recognize those characters, but I don't think it was that bad. The animation wasn't that great in terms of quality. It's more like a show than a movie. It was just disorientating, even though it's a part of a trilogy. Any other trilogy you could think of, you know, Lord of the Rings, you know, the Star Wars movies, the Hunger Games, most other trilogies that you can think of movie-wise function well on their own. They are able to stand alone and tell a story that makes sense and that isn't shifting constantly. I understand you didn't need to start from the bottom and explain who all these characters are. Obviously, we don't need to have that. However, I've read a bajillion fan fictions that were written better than this. And not to say these fan fictions are written badly. I'm trying to say that these are amateur writers here. Amateur writers who can write something 10 times better and more cohesive than whatever the hell I just watched was. And so my criticism is that this is supposed to finish this universe. This is for the future supposed to be the go-to to find the middle ground between the 52 movies that a lot of people weren't sold on and the new movies, which I'm hoping will be for the best. And it didn't really do what I would have liked it to do. But that's my own simplistic way of thinking. You know, it's like, what was my first impressions of the movie? Which isn't really important, because what I want to know is whether this movie is worth watching. And to know that, I think it's best if I looked at how narratively immersive I think these movies are or will be. What is narrative immersion, you may be wondering? Well, narrative immersion is a concept which explains how engaged we are with fictional media. Narrative immersion can be split into two halves: transportation and identification. And this has been found out and studied and determined by psychology papers by many people, including yours truly. I've taken this concept and made my own scale and way of scoring fiction. This is a pretty useful method to break down stories and truly determine subjectively how narratively immersive something was. So I'm going to do that for this movie, which I did watch, to determine whether this is a trilogy worth watching. So in terms of transportation, this can be split into 5 different parts. I only want to flag up the things that were particularly poor. So in terms of transportation, we're talking about the outside world, so the context in which the story took place and the context in which Barry was surrounded by, so the multiverse. So think about Barry as living in a country and think about the outside world as the continent. We don't see the map, you know, like we see the stables, we see his lab, we didn't see how people reacting to the Justice League outside of the speech area that they were in. We didn't see the neighborhood that Barry's house was in. We didn't get establishing shots in a narrative sense, but we did get to see the other Earths, to be fair. So that's why I gave them a 0.5, because it's not like it was completely isolated. And also, you know, this is a part 1. Then we have the interesting events, which is the interesting events of the story beats that were really supposed to be the climaxes and the lowest points and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a 0.5 because there were interesting things happening, you know, making the machines and the marriage. However, there was so much more that could have been happening, and I really felt that when watching the movie. Then the attention aspect of it, whether it was attention grabbing, and I really think that it was nowhere near as attention grabbing as it could have been. It was so confusing. It was making you think, oh, what's going on? It really struggled to keep my attention. It really struggled. I almost wanted to stop watching it. So yeah, I have to give that a 0. I literally cannot think of a time when I was interested that wasn't just the Bat family nonsense, and those were like 5-second long things that were happening where I was extremely interested. Everything else not interesting in the slightest. It wasn't awful, it just wasn't very attention grabbing. Like, or if I didn't like the characters as much as I did, and if they didn't have any Batman scenes, then I can't lie, I would never be watching this movie as a standalone, which I can't say about other things that DC have made, like Under the Red Hood, for instance, which is amazing as a standalone movie, and other things like War. I think Justice League War is a bit underrated. And then the identification half of the narrative immersion scale, particularly something to flag up, is the villains slash conflicts. The villains and conflicts neither were very interesting, neither were very impactful or detrimental. We never felt scared of what was going to happen. We never felt intimidated by the villains or the conflicts. We never felt like there was any real threat by anything, like the world ending. And the villain, I guess, Wrath or the Crime Syndicate, kind of tacky, I can't lie. So, or the old guy who wasn't necessarily a villain, like they were the kind of tacky, and Amazo I felt like was out of character. OC, we barely even got Luthor. You know, I know it's not a Superman movie or whatever, but like I feel like Luthor is a really great villain for everyone, like for the Justice League rather than just Superman. And I just wish that they had at least emphasized him or Amazo in that fight to be a threat, because they didn't feel like they were very threatening. So that's why I give it 0.5 for villains and conflicts. Motifs and themes, same thing. There were some cohesive motifs and themes of the whole traveling through time every time it happened. The yellow orangey stream that we saw, you know, we had the whole wedding, we had the flowers, Iris, romance was its own theme, guilt was a theme as well. But I just feel like it wasn't clear. Like it was a bit too all over the place to find like a very common themes, because in some universes romance was important, other it was like what, justice, but we didn't get that strong sense of, oh, we're making this Justice League because we want to be, you know, we want to protect. It was more so, we have this one enemy, let's make a whole league to defeat the enemy. Like it was just, it wasn't well made or written in that sense. Like their motivations weren't very well made, and the motifs, there was not really many motifs, but there were some on both ends. You could vaguely say there kind of some themes, kind of some motifs. So I would go with 0.5 for that. And then the last but not least, was it emotionally engaging? I would say kind of. So another 0.5. I'm so sorry for these 0.5s, but kind of, you know, I mean, it was emotionally engaging in a sense of when Iris died, for instance. That was sad when she died, and you know, the whole Bruce meeting his family, the whole Brainiac dying and stuff for Kara. Occasionally it was sad. I mean, I felt bad for Barry. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm a huge Batman fan, not necessarily like a huge DC Heroes fan, but I do quite like Barry Allen. I think he's a very nice protagonist, and I watched Flashpoint and I really enjoyed that. So I don't think my problem with the emotional engagement is that I couldn't connect with Barry as a character, and the problem that went with his plights and his personal problems. Because my problem mostly is that apart from Iris dying, I mean, what else was there for me to be emotional about? The worlds were ending, and yet we didn't see that, we didn't feel that. I mean, I reference any other thing, I don't know if you guys have seen, but Jujutsu Kaisen had this whole season 2 at the end where it was the last episode, I believe, where just a bunch of people died. And I think that it was probably one of the most recent things that I've seen where I really felt sad about the people who lost what they lost, the families who thought they survived but they died. And then I rewatched Invincible as well, because now I'm watching season 2 a bit late, and the way that they did the whole finale of season 1 is still so impactful and so emotionally engaging. Like just the way that they showed Mark's guilt alongside the pain and the horror of the victims. And I feel like there was nowhere near as much of an impact of what the world ending or the multiverse's ending meant. There was nowhere near enough emphasis on what that would mean and how that would make people feel. And so it was difficult to be emotionally engaged. I could only be engaged by Barry's being upset by certain things. They should have killed Iris like 5 times over. So yeah, 0.5 is honestly kind of nice. So I'm giving this movie a total of 6.5 out of 10. That's how narratively immersive it was. So the big question for movie 1, was it worth watching? Well, I'd say yes. I'd say yes. Even though I have a lot of criticisms, there are some good points. I mean, the inside world, so the context in which Barry is operating, so the things that are his lab and his working space and the inside of the time stream, things like that, I rated perfect 1. I rated the abilities and skills perfect 1 as well, because we understood what the difference between strength and intelligence was, especially in that brainstorm. Then in terms of the MC, I think Barry was a solid MC. I think the side characters were solid side characters. They functioned well as plot devices, meaning that this movie wasn't perfect. 6.5 out of 10 is certainly not great, but compared to the other unknown films that I've seen or I've heard about, I'd say it's the best, which is why I think it's a good enough start to make us watch the rest of the trilogy. It makes the rest of the trilogy worth giving a try. But I mean, what do you think? If you want to do one thing, then subscribe. Watch my other videos in actually I don't know what playlist this is going to be in, so watch my videos, I don't know. And then I say quick goodbye. Annyeong. Let me know if you want me to watch part 2, because I will if you know, if you guys want that, and I can make a summary, maybe.